me. I actually hate to use microphones. I have to make sure this is on so they can record the... Sorry. There. I'm such a techno idiot. But if you can't hear me, raise your hand. I'll be embarrassed. I do teach speech for the stage, so I'll work. But anyway, thank you very much for coming to our Berggren Forum, in which we will describe Artists Striving to End Poverty, the school Shanti Bhavan, where we worked as teaching artists, and a little bit about our experience. I hope by the end of this that if you have questions about what it might take to volunteer or contribute to either ASTEP or Shanti Bhavan, that you'll be in touch with us or look up either of these organizations online. So let's just dive into the description of ASTEP, okay?
Yeah.
So, skipping ahead. Artists Striving to End Poverty is one of the few places we have ever found where arts can be of constructive service to people, certainly people of impoverished backgrounds, and still work as art. However, not remote, not imperial, and certainly not purely therapeutic. I had a lot of people criticize me for doing this because, oh, you're making theater therapeutic. And I'm going, you know. ASTEP serves all of these in sending teaching artists to different places in the world, and your obligation is for 4 to 6 weeks of teaching your particular art to deprived youth. From their website, ASTEP says, ASTEP connects performing and visual artists with underserved youth in the U.S. and around the world to awaken their imaginations, foster critical thinking, and help them break the cycle of poverty. I would, by the way, also add that essential aspects of ASTEP are the manner in which the volunteers engender collaborative work and the sharing of creative expression. And all of this, by the way, helps any of these children, whatever their age, increase self-esteem and a kind of self-management. I had discovered ASTEP through KCACTF. Yeah, let's just get a few more initials up there. Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival, an organization that I also do a lot of work with, and Alfred University participates in it. 2 years ago at KCACTF, my directing institute table was next to ASTEP, and I got to know them just a little bit, and when I came home, I did research and found, they're just the group I want to work for. The organization was created in 2003 by 4 Juilliard graduates who had seasonal employment. In other words, these musicians could work certain times of the year and earn almost a living wage, but they wanted ways to help the nation and at the same time possibly have a little bit of stability. So they created this organization, ASTEP, that partners with schools and community organizations in several locations. Right now there are 5 ASTEP programs in the U.S. alone, 3 in inner city New York, 2 in Dade County, Florida, and both of those serve primarily refugee populations and certainly children of poverty. There is also a relatively new one in Venezuela and 2 now in India. ASTEP believes that investigation of life through the arts is essential to the social and intellectual success of children. Both UNICEF and World Health Organization in their charters support this notion, and by the way, one of the things that attracted me was the ASTEP charter was just peppered with language from both of these organizations. Finally, ASTEP believes that the community in which they work must express their needs, and that the ASTEP then goes to help fulfill those needs. They certainly don't have the audacity to say, this is what you need. This to me was the perfect way to spend my sabbatical, and I thank the Alfred University administration for accepting that. Certainly for me, teaching theater for a group that wants to save the world through art, what better combination? You can and should apply for ASTEP if you are an artist with a bent for teaching, and certainly the belief that children learning any of the arts has the potential to, I'll use the phrase again, to save the world. Certainly a project near and dear to my heart, but I'm running out of time. A-STEP provides excellent training for teaching troubled children and for teaching beyond your own cultural group. So if you're accepted to the program, they treat you very well, they take very good care of you and prepare you. And Craig will talk about his experience with that.
It seemed to me that from the very start there was never any question about Becky's being accepted to the A-STEP program. In fact, A-STEP was more than overjoyed, thrilled was the word that they used, to have someone of Becky's extensive experience and expertise asking to volunteer for the program in India. Becky was a person who could make their India program at Shanti Bhavan shine. When Becky was accepted, she let A-STEP know that, though not a deal breaker, it would be good for A-STEP to look at me as well, since I also worked in the arts. A-STEP and Shanti Bhavan, through several long Skype interviews and questionnaires, soon had me on board as well. The vetting process was very impressive, and both Abby Gertz of A-STEP and Ajit George, representing Shanti Bhavan, were very reassuring concerning my fears about teaching academic subjects, something that was required of all volunteers. Though I had extensive experience making art in a studio and in professional settings, I did not have a lot of teaching on my resume. A-STEP suggested a really good book about the techniques of classroom teaching, Teach Like a Champion by Doug Lemov, which I read cover to cover and took many of the techniques and suggestions with me to Shanti Bhavan. It was very helpful, and I highly recommend this book for anyone interested in teaching. Now, once the ball was rolling, and we both needed to get visas for India and shots to protect us while we were there. Though this was a bureaucratic pain, pun intended, this all went fairly quickly and smoothly. Also, both A-STEP and Shanti Bhavan were helpful in advising Becky and I on what to take with us and what not to take with us. Also, Shanti Bhavan had some needs that they listed, and they also suggested what they might like to, would be nice to have, like cameras, and Becky's family actually provided several cameras.
And
back to you.
They also gave us, my family's amazing. They made many contributions of school supplies, which the school needed, and certain members of the family contributed funding so that our overweight luggage, we could pay through that funding for that overweight luggage. I just want to point out this X marks the spot. Shanti Bhavan is located in southern India. It is in the state of Tamil Nadu. And something I just realized in putting this presentation together, the three states that surround it, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and Karnataka, they come up on the maps of India all the time for the areas of greatest poverty, for the areas where the highest number of child labor violations occur, and a really disturbing statistic for all of us. Tamil Nadu has the highest recorded incidence of female infanticide in India. So I have to think that Dr. George made a very careful choice in terms of where he put Shanti Bhavan. The name itself, this is a picture of Dr. George, his son Ajit, the assistant principal and the head of the kitchen staff. These were very important people in our stay there. And by the way, that's the house that we lived in. And I keep teasing Craig that the water containers look like giant Kodak film canisters. They aren't. I thought it would be cool if they were. The name itself, as I said, means Haven of Peace. The school is the centerpiece of much larger projects created by the George Foundation. Dr. George says categorically, and has said many times, the purpose of the George Foundation is to eliminate poverty in India, especially rural India. He's taken on a massive task. Along with Shanti Bhavan, the George Foundation has the Baldev Farm. That's an organic farm that raises all of the vegetables and some of the fruits to support the school. Really, the only food they buy from outside is rice and sometimes wheat flour. The Baldev Medical Center, it's a rural medical clinic with a modern hospital. It is open for general admissions and so forth 6 weeks out of the year, but the hospital also functions some during the year. There was also an art museum. But the main purpose, as Dr. George conceives it, is education of India's rural poor and also hiring local people for jobs, for example, working on the farm, learning modern organic farming methods, and avoiding those Monsanto seeds we keep hearing about, and support of rural lifestyles and the support of craft. As employment for local people, they hire farm workers, kitchen staff. They have 3 full-time women altering clothing. Clothing is donated for the students, and the kids are so skinny, if the clothing comes from American sources, it needs to be altered. But then there are drivers, and then this wonderful group of women called the aunties. I'm going to have Craig talk about them. They're kind of house mothers, teachers of English, teachers of social graces, and so on.
Just a quick word about the aunties. I worked very closely with several of them. Auntie Annie, pictured here on the left, assisted in the art room. She was effectively the student's art teacher when no volunteer was available. She was naturally talented, enterprising, and she knew where to find some supplies that were normally sequestered away in remote storerooms at Shanti Bhavan. This was very helpful at times. She was also the school nurse. This expertise also came into play several times while we were at Shanti Bhavan. She was multi-talented and extremely warm and endearing. I miss her a lot and her charm. Auntie Raji on the right, always smiling and accommodating, was a quiet master of wrangling students. In addition to teaching, Dr. George wanted me to photograph all of the students of Shanti Bhavan, both individual shots and class group shots. This took a lot of energy planning and with such a diverse group of students, pre-K through 12. You have to just think about the task. Nothing intimidated Auntie Raji at all. She wrangled, and I just clicked the shutter.
So Shanti Bhavan was originally conceived to be self-sufficient with its own water supply, its own continuing food supply, and adequate medical care for some 400 people. One of the sad things is the Wall Street disaster of 2008 was so destructive of the foundation's investments that they've had to close down the art museum. They've pulled in the scope of fruits and vegetables, and they've also, I'm afraid, pulled in the scope of the rural education programs. But they still keep the school working at a very high rate. They bring in 24 per class, and those students work their way through the school. But a significant thing is that since 2008, they have also had to rely on gifts and substantial numbers of volunteers. While we were there, we met a dozen or more volunteers with whom we overlapped. Only one other was with A-STEP. In other words, if you are interested, you can bypass A-STEP and you can contribute or volunteer at Shanti Bhavan. The 10 or so other volunteers were from very different countries, and we were very happy to join a growing movement that is, for lack of a better term, and I think this is a good one, called voluntourism. Some of you may want to consider that. This is a picture of the volunteers on Valentine's Day. We made 750 Nutella and banana sandwiches for tea time snack for all of the students and everybody who worked at Shanti Bhavan. It took us about 2.5 hours, and we had a really good time. It was a good bonding thing, but the main thing was that the kids had never had Nutella before, and they love yeast bread, by the way. So this was definitely a sweet treat. Dr. George, going back to him, understands that the technology boom of the mid-'80s did substantially improve the lives of a number of Indians. However, in a country of 1.3 billion people, the IT boom really improved the lives of only about 3 million. He notes that the level of poverty and the pervasiveness of it is still pretty much the same. He made his money in the IT boom in the US, and so he has created Shanti Bhavan with the idea that he will assist in the education of rural poor and that the aim is to change the face of India. Again, if you know me or my husband, the idealism is amazing. The children are brought into the school somewhere between the ages of 3.5 and 4. They spend the first year and a half learning English and also learning how to cope with, use modern conveniences. They are then provided with an education pre-K through 12, and that provides them with the chance, literally, to change their lives, the lives of their families or communities, and to change the nation. The aim is, besides providing the education itself, is to provide safety. Many of these children come from tremendously endangered situations. Good nutrition, safety, family environment, and an ethical education in an environment of open-mindedness. As we lived and worked at Shanti Bhavan, we became really aware of the huge differences between even what our perceptions were before we left and what the reality is for more than half of India's population. So we've collected these slides that are kind of a comparison of poor India, child labor, and tourist India. So you'll just kind of see us going back and forth through those. Yeah, we love Taj Mahal. But these children of poverty, these children who are trapped in child labor, are those served by Shanti Bhavan. And they come mostly from the poorest families or families of great dysfunction. The Shanti Bhavan graduates, by the time they finish their 13th year, have learned how to live in contemporary India, how to move through various levels of society, to think for themselves, to help others, to honor and tolerate all religions, to read, write, compute, illustrate, discuss, debate, think critically, to live with self-confidence and open-mindedness. The school was opened in 1997 with the first pre-K class of 24. Through the next 13 years, they added a class each year. And by the way, if someone leaves or has to be dismissed, that space is not filled. So the very first class graduated in 2009 with 19 students. And the cool thing is, this year, that same group also graduated from college. If students are accepted at a college after Shanti Bhavan, and they all are, the foundation also pays for their college education. So we're talking about tremendous extension here. This group of students certainly grew up as a family, and now as they graduate from college, 3 of the 19 have jobs at Goldman Sachs. 2 others are pursuing graduate school, and 1 is an author soon to be published. The remaining students are entering some sort of career. Most of them, it looks like, teaching, and 2 are becoming software engineers, but they need to go on to grad school to do that. The school itself is organized in its curriculum developed along the lines of the Indian education system. So at the end of 10th grade and at the end of 12th grade, the students take national exams. In 10th grade, those exams determine the curriculum they're permitted to study for the rest of high school. And at the end of 12th grade, the exams determine what colleges might make them offers and literally what their career might be. Much of the Indian education is based on rote learning. So we had a blast with the arts because we used our arts backgrounds to expand, along with other programs in the school, critical thinking and collaboration that we certainly believe are the mark of a well-educated, creative thinker. Yes, we took Alfred's sons. And the students were very excited. One of the front pages has a story on Arun Varshney. And they looked at the cover and they said, "This man's an Indian." And they were shocked. Yes, we live in Alfred, where there are a number of people from different countries, different cultures, and it works very well here. So we believe it can work where you are too. But they were definitely thrilled. The school is terribly understaffed. This is probably for 3 or 4 really good reasons. One is its location, rural India. It's hard to attract professional teachers to such an area. I think one of the others is that all of the students are Dalits. They are untouchables. And I'm kind of betting that many teachers believe that if they want to have a career where they actually can advance, then they better not go near the place. Thus, volunteers are needed in all areas for all ages of students. And volunteers don't have to be artists. They desperately need somebody to teach chemistry and physics. Okay. A day in the life. This is the dining area. The entire school gathered here 3 different times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That makes sense.
That's Alicia, and she is that tall.
Yeah, a volunteer from Germany. I think she's 6'3". We looked up to her. There's a full-time kitchen staff of 4, and they turn out 3 meals a day, 2 tea time snacks a day, 7 days a week for approximately 400 people. And the simplicity of the kitchen is astounding. This man, Mr. Raghu, is the head of the kitchen. He actually had a job in the 80s installing kitchens in 5-star hotels in Bangalore. Dr. George invited him to come to Shanti Bhavan to design and install the kitchen, and he stayed. He stayed because he believes in the work. He's also now married to one of the Indian teachers, and they have a lovely little boy who's a 2nd grader. The volunteers, along with the Indian teachers, really work just about every hour of the day. The students have a day that begins at about 5:30 in the morning. And for the youngest, bedtime is at 8:30. For middle school age, the students are in bed by 9. Grades 7 through 12, after a 7:30 p.m. dinner, they have 3 more hours of some combination of arts activities, prep, which we call study hall, and instruction in classes, or further work in the arts. So Craig, those of you who know me, I had to get up every morning by 6 and be engaged for the rest of the day. Craig had a really interesting set of revelations with his teaching. So
Well, I taught 4th and 5th grade art, and 7th grade creative writing, persuasive writing, literature, and grammar. Aside from the teaching, I also performed a number of extracurricular tasks. I supervised physical training, which that was a picture showing the early morning PT.
You got to see the sunrise.
Let me see, Dr. George also wanted me to photograph all of the students, and so I also worked with some older students to create several posters. And I taught photography and some Photoshop workshops. I also, again, worked with older students to create a number of PR designs for Dr. George. When Dr. George heard of my graphic design background, he jumped right on it and wanted me to help create several things for Shanti Bhavan, including a large backdrop for a video Skype interview. I think it was for She's the First. Also, I created a photo album, an extensive photo album for a thank you for a donor in Italy that Ajit George took there.
So I was not quite as busy as Craig, wink, wink. I taught literature, grammar, and writing to grades 10, 11, and 12. I helped prepare 10 and 12 for their national exams. And one of the things I discovered is that especially the 10th graders were very weak in their writing, and all of the national exams are taken, at least parts of every of their 13 tests involve essays. With the permission of the school and the help of a couple of other volunteers, I launched a writing program for grades 7 through 12, and I'm pretty proud to say that the 10th grade came back from their exams, each one each day, jubilant over how well it had gone because the writing went well. They also passed, both 10th grade and 12th grade passed their national exams in what's called the first class. That means that every single one of them scored nationally above 85%. So I think that's excellent. I also taught history to 8th and 9th graders, and I taught civics to 8th and 9th graders. And when I had spare time, I was teaching public speaking, improvisation, and doing Shakespearean scene work outside of classes. Within classes, by the way, I used oral interpretation and performance techniques for teaching poetry and plays. And again, the 10th graders were ecstatic over how well they learned the poetry that they have to have for those national exams, because they had actually not only read it and tried to understand it, but they'd actually performed it in site-specific places. I finally, and this was the most engaging of my outside the curriculum projects, the school has an assembly every morning. It's all of the students, the teachers, the staff, and certainly the volunteers. And one of the events at assembly is the presentation of the news. The students get up at 6 in the morning and prowl the internet for news stories. I insisted that it had to be of state, national, or international importance. And this is the way, as they present a news story, it leads to discussion among the students and the faculty. And this is the way that they engage in social and political debate, and certainly gather information about medical and other scientific advances. The presentations, I was working on theatricalizing them so they'd be sort of like our Federal Theater Project living newspaper. I didn't get as far as I wanted to. You know, we had to leave. Our visas were running out. But I'm anxious to kind of remake that contact. The very fun project when we first got there was that I prepared 10 of the high school girls for Skype interviews with an American organization called She's the First. And this group travels around. The other woman with me is Jessie Sherman. She was another ASTEP volunteer. There's Jessie again. But She's the First travels around the world and finds girls, usually from deprived backgrounds, who can attest that they're the first in their family to do something. For almost all of these girls, the first to go to school, the first to graduate from high school. They will go on to college. One of them is already there, and they're the first in that. But they're also the first to do things like question traditional Indian family structure and values. So they're quite amazing when you get them up on their feet to debate and own what it is they think is their potential. The school is founded on, I think, very wonderful ideals, and it's fueled by the truth of those working each and every day, and certainly there's a practicality to it too. There's a school song, remember none of this is very old, 1997, and the school song is sung by the whole school once a week, Saturday assemblies, and then anytime there are visitors. But for me, the words of the song are, don't worry, I'm not going to sing, okay. The words of the song are really quite moving when you think about where these kids come from. Part of it, this is a precious moment, we've only just begun. There's a long, long way to go before our day is done. We cannot see tomorrow. Yesterday is but a dream. Today's what really matters. We want to dream our dreams. Sorry, I wept every time I heard them sing this. And I thought by learning it I would get over that. Anyway, there's a choral interlude that happens in 2 verses. The first one is, I might be an astronaut, I might be a physician, an artist, or a designer, or a great musician. Children of Shanti Bhavan, we have a chance to share, to be someone, to do something. And then the other choral interlude is, I might be a movie star, I might be president, a dancer or a gymnast or a world champion. They believe it. and they're working toward it.
Just very quickly, the way this assembly is organized is the very youngest, the smallest kids are right at the very front, and they kind of step up to the later grades toward the back. And so when you are standing there hearing this, and we always stood at the very front when they were singing these songs, when they would start doing this and you'd look at these tiny little faces in front of you, it was just sort of overwhelming. I'll let it go back to you, but I just, the assemblies for me were just marvelous times.
Yes, absolutely. There's also a staff faculty prayer which the volunteers also learned, and this is recited every single morning at the beginning of assembly, and the children participate by involving themselves in a kind of meditation and reverence. Just the last couple of sentences of that. Help us to build Shanti Bhavan into a haven of peace, and let this peace touch the lives of all we meet. We salute the divine in each other, and then we all bowed to the students, and then to one another. Each time we bowed, we said namaste, which means, great life, great day, and so on. We were on the go from 6 in the morning to 10 p.m. with half-hour breaks for 3 meals and 15-minute breaks for tea each day. By the way, I ended up doing a lot of teaching during the tea breaks, the tea times. And I would love to encourage you, if you want more information on either A-Step or Shanti Bhavan, look online. They both have very good web presence. And you could also talk with Craig or me. But to sum up, I think in Shanti Bhavan we worked harder than ever we have worked before, but enjoyed it immensely. Some of this may be the freedom for artists in such circumstances. The kids were intensely curious about us and wanted to know everything about us. But most of it was the way in which students, their energy, and their sometimes blunt honesty refreshed mind and heart. The most valuable experience from the combination of A-Step and Shanti Bhavan is the re-emphasis for Craig and me in terms of what it means to create art within a community, and that art builds society. Society appreciates and further builds art, and the language of the endeavor even more inspires our ways to understand our world and each other. Poetry, fiction, painting, sculpture, all forms of music, every style of dance, and of course theater are ways to educate, encapsulate, and keep experiences, and most of all to inspire all to ever greater human achievement. Shanti Bhavan.
I realized that at one point when I was talking about my teaching, I'd forgotten one particular occasion where a lot of the names over there are quite long, and so as I was taking down names in my art class and 7th grade class, I would ask them for their nicknames so that I could actually, call them by something that was a little bit more familiar for them. And so as I was going around, this one kid said, "Oh, my name is VJ." So I wrote VJ, and he said, no, that's VIJAY, VJ, that's my name. And so you run into some interesting kinds of situations there.
All right. Debbie.
Yeah.